welcome to the 700 Club. Quote, a disappointment to conservatives. Well, that's what Vice President Pence said about Chief Justice John Roberts in an exclusive interview with CBN News. The Vice President also sent a strong message to pro-lifers. Wake up, because the destiny of the court lies in the 2020 election. Well, how else did he turn up the heat? Here's David Brody with that exclusive interview from Florida.
A humid August trip to Florida seemed the perfect place for Mike Pence to turn up the heat and motivate the base. At one of his signature Faith in America campaign events, he spelled out the stakes in the upcoming election.
The choice will not be whether America will be more conservative or more liberal, more Republican or more Democrat, more red or more blue. The choice we face is whether America remains America.
In our time together on the road, the vice president was animated throughout, lowering the boom, especially when it came to his thoughts on what a Joe Biden presidency could mean for the country.
Joe Biden and the Democratic Party have been overtaken by the radical left. He's calling for a historic increase in funding to Planned Parenthood of America. He would appoint activist judges to our courts who would literally trample on the progress that we've made on life and religious liberties.
And speaking of the courts, the vice president made very clear that the Supreme Court will be of paramount importance in this election, especially because he sees a chief justice who can no longer be counted on to be a reliable conservative.
Are you scratching your head a little bit on John Roberts? I mean, we're not going to call him David Souter at this point, but conservatives have had a track record of having some problems with Supreme Court justices that you thought were going to be a reliable vote. Or at least when I say reliable vote, I'm just talking about, you know, to adhere to conservative principles.
Look, we have great respect for the institution of the Supreme Court of the United States. But Chief Justice John Roberts has been a disappointment to conservatives.
Pence citing multiple examples, from Roberts' key 2012 decision to uphold Obamacare, and more recently, when he sided with liberals to strike down a Louisiana pro-life law.
I think it's been a wake-up call for pro-life voters around the country who understand that in a very real sense, the destiny of the Supreme Court is on the ballot in 2020.
He sees religious freedom under attack as well after Roberts joined liberals again just last week. In that case, the Supreme Court ruled against a Nevada church, upholding a limit on the number of people attending church services during COVID-19.
There are many Americans, not just religious Americans, many Americans concerned about where this is going from a religious freedom standpoint as it relates specifically to COVID-19.
Well, look, our nation has been through a very challenging time, and we're still working our way through the coronavirus pandemic. But you don't give up your constitutional liberties, even in a pandemic.
To be sure, the pandemic will be a major factor for both sides in this election. Here in Florida, a recent COVID spike is hopefully giving way to a slow return to normal. But in this election cycle, the only thing we know for sure is nothing is normal.
Well, hello, Florida.
Gone are the big campaign events of the past, replaced by smaller gatherings like the one that Pence attended in Florida, part of the Life Wins tour.
And under this president, I promise you, we're going to continue to work every day to put the right to life back at the center of American law.
President Trump and the VP will need an all-hands-on-deck approach to beat a candidate that, well, at least according to many polls, is leading the race. But will Biden be a match for Trump in the upcoming debates? Some Democrats have called for Biden to skip them, and Trump supporters believe that the 77-year-old has lost a step or two, becoming slower.
I can't speak to some of what's being discussed about him today, but the antidote is to be on that stage, to square up, to be willing to debate President Donald Trump. The American people deserve nothing less.
They also deserve a fair election. Democrats want massive mail-in balloting across the entire country, something the Trump administration says is fraught with all sorts of problems.
If 2020 comes around and all of a sudden there is massive mail-in balloting, is it a fair election?
Democrat governors around the country, using the excuse of the coronavirus pandemic, are talking about mailing ballots to literally everyone in their state with no safeguard for the integrity of the process. That principle of one person, one vote is at the center of our democracy, and we've got to defend it. That's why you're going to see this president and our administration head straight to the courthouse. We're going to oppose universal mail-in voting, even while we encourage and respect the great tradition of absentee balloting. And we're going to win that fight. I truly do believe it.
Determination from a vice president being counted on to rally the base this fall. David Brody, CBN News in Tampa, Florida.
Very interesting. Well, in other news, nationwide, new cases of COVID-19 are declining. Even more good news, one treatment offering instant help is available now. John Jessup has more from our CBN News Bureau.
That's right, Pat. Nationally, new infections have dropped 14% in the last 2 weeks, but cases are still rising in at least 10 states. Meanwhile, President Trump is pushing for schools to reopen as tens of thousands of students are already back in the classroom. It is images like this one that have parents concerned. Students in a crowded hallway in a Georgia school, no social distancing, and very few masks. On the medical front, some good news. One treatment offering immediate relief is available now, and another like it could be available within weeks. National Institutes of Health Director Dr. Francis Collins says they show promise.
One of the things that I'm pretty excited about is the opportunity to use convalescent plasma. That is plasma that's donated by people who have survived. So if people are listening who have survived, I hope they would look into going to their blood bank or the Red Cross and donating a unit of blood, because that might save somebody else. And we could go even further than that and actually purify the antibodies from people who have survived, so-called monoclonal antibodies. And those are about to get tested in just the next few weeks to see whether they also provide life-saving benefits.
The U.S. government awarded the drug maker Regeneron a $450 million contract to begin production of its treatment. And Pat, other drug companies are also working on similar treatments.
Well, joining us now is our medical reporter, Lori Johnson. Lori, talk about this convalescent plasma. What is it and how does it work?
Well, Pat, it's a wonderful gift from God. What happens is when a virus infects our body, our immune system naturally produces these antibodies. And we've talked about these antibodies before. These are the little soldiers that battle off the virus. And so people with healthy immune systems who have already recovered from COVID-19 still have these wonderful antibodies in their blood, and they're being asked to donate that blood. So please go to coronavirus.gov or the Red Cross and see how you can donate a unit of blood, because that blood is full of those wonderful antibodies and can be transfused into people who are very, very sick with COVID-19, and those antibodies can help them. And you wonder, why do they not have their own antibodies? Because we know people with weakened immune systems don't produce enough of those antibodies. And so then the monoclonal antibodies are exactly like the antibodies that we see in our blood, except they're synthetic. They're made in a laboratory, so we don't need to rely on survivors to give their own blood. These monoclonal antibodies are being tested right now and could be available as early as next month. So that could sort of bridge the gap between now and when a vaccine is available.
Well, I understand there was a very successful nursing home study of one of these drugs. Could you tell us about that?
Right. So Eli Lilly is one of the companies that's manufacturing these monoclonal antibodies. And in the earlier trials, they worked very well. And so now 2,400 people who live and work in nursing homes in the United States are going to be trying these monoclonal antibodies. So when a nursing home has one COVID-19 case, then they notify Eli Lilly and they send out this RV and start giving people in the nursing home these injections, these infusions of the monoclonal antibodies. And these people will be studied to see how they do. Half of them will get it and the other half won't. The other half will get a placebo, and then they're going to compare the results. So that's going on right now, and the results should be available very soon. There are other trials going on. It looks like these monoclonal antibodies in earlier studies show that it's very protective for people who don't even have have the virus, and that also is very curative for people who do have the virus. They're testing it among very sick people in the hospital and other people who don't have it at all, but who are at very high risk of getting it.
Lori, what about people going to school? The president said something about little children had some kind of an immunity, but there are a number of cases of coronavirus affecting little kids these days. So what about people going back to school?
Well, Pat, you and I know, being in the public eye, speaking extemporaneously all the time, sometimes we say things we really don't mean. I mean, just last week I said on this program, convalescent plaza, when I meant plasma. And I think that's what happened with Donald Trump when he said that children are immune. Obviously, that's not true. We know that children get the virus. Being immune means you don't get that. What I believe he meant, and what his campaign clarified later, is that children are not susceptible. And what he really meant to say was children don't have those bad complications and deaths. That's very rare. It hardly ever happens at all. And so that's really what he meant. Anthony Fauci earlier this week, testifying before a congressional committee, said that no, of course, children are not immune. We know that we get it, but they don't have those serious complications, and certainly not the deaths that we see in older people. And Dr. Fauci said, yes, schools should reopen safely, and because the effects of kids not being in school are extremely detrimental on so many different fronts.
Lori, thank you so much. We always appreciate your insights.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
John?
Well, Pat, 2 days after the worst disaster in its history, Lebanon is struggling to recover. These satellite images show the scope of the destruction to Beirut port and surrounding areas. Video shows a priest dashing for cover as the blast hit during service, and a bride-to-be taking wedding pictures knocked down to the ground. Nations across the globe are sending aid and rescue teams. Israel, Lebanon's neighbor to the south, also offering aid and condolences. Tel Aviv's City Hall lit up with the colors of the Lebanese flag. Nearly 300,000 Lebanese have lost their homes in the blast. Pat, just amazing devastation there.
It is. That country on the brink, and I remember visiting Beirut. It was the Paris of the Middle East. I mean, it was just the most beautiful city, most marvelous facilities, restaurants, hotels, shopping. It was extraordinary. Then it was destroyed when the PLO came in and began a war, and they've never recovered. And the country now, we understand, the finances have been looted. They're in a desperate downward spiral financially, and well, our heart goes out to Lebanon because it was a great country, and I think in the Bible it still has a very important place a role to play. Terry?
Well, coming up,
It's ominous. The red dragon is rising in the Persian Gulf. China is now forming a strategic partnership with Iran. Why are they in cahoots? Why are the Iranians suspicious of the alliance? And what's the risk to the United States and the rest of the free world? Gary Lean has this explanation.
During his recent blistering attack against Beijing, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo warned that China is making the world's waterways less safe for international commerce.
President Nixon once said he feared he had created a Frankenstein by opening the world to the CCP. And here we are.
And nearly 50 years after Nixon's historic meeting with Mao, the Chinese government is making aggressive moves in the Middle East, closely aligning itself with one of America's top enemies.
Iran's regime currently is looking at possibly being squeezed by sanctions to tune of $400 billion. Today, Iran has become a front porch for China rather than a backyard.
That backyard is the strategic Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway where much of the world's oil travels. It's also a choke point where Western and Japanese oil tankers have come under attack from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Most recently, Iran launched a missile from a helicopter in the strait, striking a mock-up of a U.S. aircraft carrier. The message? Despite U.S. sanctions against the regime, Iran intends to dominate the flow of oil out of the Persian Gulf. And now China enters the region as a new player. Iran has reportedly entered into a 25-year contract whereby the Chinese government